Saturday marks the 20th anniversary of the September 11 terrorist attacks. Morgan Stanley, the World Trade Center's largest tenant at the time, was among the many companies impacted by the tragic events. Former Morgan Stanley president and COO Bob Scott was at the World Trade Center on 9/11. He joins us now. Thanks so much for joining us, Bob.
You're welcome, Wilf. Good afternoon.
If we can, I'd love to start with your personal memories of the day. As we just said, Morgan Stanley was one of the biggest tenants, if not the biggest tenant in the building. Talk us through the memories of the day, where you were and how things unfolded.
That morning I was down in the World Trade Center number 3, which was the building that connected to two towers, giving a presentation to a group of economists. In the middle of my presentation, there was a loud noise, and the building shook, and the ceiling started to come down in the auditorium. I made my way out onto the street and was able to look up at the top of the World Trade Center and see the dark smoke, and it was clear that something really horrible had happened. As I got into my car to try to drive back up to our offices, which were in Times Square, I watched the second plane bank and fly into the South Tower, which was where we had most of our people located. And I thought for a moment, my goodness, we've really just suffered a tremendous calamity.
And as you said, the second plane went right into the floors in the area where Morgan Stanley typically had a lot of staff. Some 3,700 employees were stationed in the World Trade Center. Remarkably, only 6 losses, far too many, of course, regardless, but could have been a lot more. What happened? How was it not higher?
Well, as it turned out, the number was 13, but unbeknownst to me, as I watched from the street, when the first plane hit, the head of security in that building for Morgan Stanley, a man named Rick Rescorla, had immediately begun evacuating the building, as he had prepared the employees for going all the way back to 1993. And by the time the second plane hit squarely in our floors, most of the people had already left the Morgan Stanley space, and his actions saved many, many lives that day.
Bob, of course, his actions were very instrumental in saving all of those people, but you then still had to operate a business after quite literally the smoke cleared. What leadership lessons came out of all of that? Banding together, making it through a crisis to the other side. What did it teach you?
Well, there were a lot of lessons that came from that. The first thing we did was organize a command center up in Midtown. And the most important thing we did was get our priorities straight. And those priorities were our employees, our clients, the community. And by that, I mean New York City, Washington, D.C., the securities industry. We were an important part of that community, and the country. And it was important to have those priorities straight because it informed all our messaging. And we wanted to reinforce that those were the priorities in every communication that came out of the firm. The second thing that we learned was that disaster planning is critical. You need to have redundancies. In our case, we needed it for computer capacity. We needed backup trading locations. We needed other office space. In this day and age, you'd have to have a plan for work from home. And you even need to have a backup plan for HR. In the case of the World Trade Center attack, we needed a way to find all our people because they had scattered to the 4 winds. And then finally, after that, you need to be able to pay everybody again. So in addition, you need to test all these capabilities. As you know, Rick Rescorla used to have fire drills in the World Trade Center building. You got to have live tests of your backup locations. You need to test backup generators. And all those things are critical to having your disaster plan work at the time you may need it. And then finally, I think it's really important that senior management be very visible. We tried to walk the floors frequently after the attacks of 9/11. You need to share the experience your staff is having. It can't be all of the staff in one box and senior management in another. You've got to communicate frequently, and the communications need to be really authentic.